I made a strategic decision a handful of years ago just to put myself out there and start writing content, right? Like those first months, I mean, I've got the data. There's no traction. The data looks terrible. There's no visibility. No one's liking it. I'm shouting into the void. And even 4 years later, 5 years later, it can sometimes still feel that way.
Sure.
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 73 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, I'm joined by Ron Latz, founder and law firm Fractional CMO of Legal Phoenix. Ron has spent the last 15 years in the legal world, from sales to managing campaigns at the largest agencies to advocating for firms as an independent consultant. He understands the challenges firms face when trying to market their firm, and that's why he started Legal Phoenix, a legal marketing consultancy that offers fractional CMO services that restore clarity and trust in law firm marketing investments. Ron, thanks for joining us today.
I appreciate it, Scott. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I did a lot of travel this month, and I got some responsibilities over here to take care of some kids with the wife. So next time.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? We all have priorities, and family should always be number one. So here's what I don't understand about your company. Why do we need clarity and trust in law firm marketing? I mean, isn't everything clear? Aren't all vendors trustworthy?
Clear as mud, Scott. Clear as mud.
I'm sure that's not just in the legal space, right? I'm sure you have friends in other spaces as well. So obviously, this is not just a legal podcast. So we want this to apply to as many people as possible. Sure. But for those aspiring entrepreneurs, or for those who have marketing and their bucket of things to handle, what are some things that someone who maybe doesn't have the most knowledgeable experience or knowledgeable background or any experience in marketing, where's the starting point? What are some things that they should be thinking through?
Well, first, I know that I was joking around and just saying clear as mud, but we're all specialists and have expertise and experience in a lot of different things. But yourself, as a lawyer, I'm a marketer. You might have some other service professionals in accounting, tax, and finance. That's exactly what they're good at. And they don't always have the time, the resources, as well as the investments that allow them to get into the nitty gritty and understand like the ins and outs and the intricacies of any types of marketing or advertising concepts. And when that does become a little bit more complicated, or you've got some significant investments, like you're very aggressively growth minded, right? You want to make sure that those dollars are producing the outcomes that you expect. So that's why I really started the consultancy. I've been inside one of the largest agencies. I helped rebuild a boutique agency. And there's always the disconnect between the agency and the law firm because sometimes their interests they can be misaligned. Sure. So what I try to do is step in and basically translate what each side is saying so that the lines of communication remain open and we can keep each other accountable, because it's not always the agency's fault and it certainly isn't always the law firm's fault. So I like to start with just basic information. If you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, you're a little bit confused, listen to the Driven Crowd podcast, listen to other legal marketing podcasts or whatever sector that you might be in. There's plenty of resources outside of podcasts. You can jump into YouTube. There's plenty of books out there, but whatever you can do initially to self-educate so that you could be prepared for these conversations, I think would be a first step.
Absolutely. And so it sounds like you're a marketer / mediator as well. I don't know what you're talking about, how marketing firms and law firms can't always get along and get on the same page. I've never had any experience with that whatsoever.
It all starts at the top, Scott, with just understanding what the business goals and objectives are so that the agency can help guide the firm with a pointed strategy to help achieve the end goals and objectives that you want on the other end. Many times firms go into this and say, I want SEO, I want ads, but there's really no rhyme or reason. There's no like strategic or thoughtful effort put into how is this going to help tie back to the business metrics. And that's a big challenge, because then you're buying things and you have no idea what they're supposed to be doing. You don't know which metrics you should be tracking. You don't know whether the campaign is successful. So if I can mediate amongst the law firm as well as the agency so that expectations are clear, everyone's rowing in the same direction, that's where I find the most successful engagements with clients.
Yeah, it's funny too. When I talk to other law firm owners and quite frankly, other business owners, one of my first questions is, hey, like, what's your vision? What are you trying to build? And do you know how many times when I've talked with various vendors, I've gotten that question? Maybe once or twice. Yes, maybe once or twice. And it's crazy because, they're seeking for me to pay them a significant amount of money, right? Because digital campaigns or any kind of multimedia campaign or any kind of marketing campaign is not cheap. And they're missing the very basic first question, which is, okay, what are you trying to build? And so, whenever I talk to a marketing vendor, we have an amazing marketing team who helps us with these vendors. But whenever I talk to one of them and they never ask me what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to build, that's a huge red flag, because how on earth are they going to put together a game plan that is going to help us get to what we're trying to build if they have no idea where they're going, right? It's like trying to go off to a destination with zero roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Listen, if you don't understand the target, you're going to be shooting and spraying everywhere, right? You got to understand, like, we're trying to connect you to the right people at the right time in the right channel so that when something does happen, right, we're hopefully the first firm to get the phone call. But if you jump on a consultation with a marketing agency and they immediately jump into product recommendations or solutions that you should purchase from them without understanding those targets for your firm, I think it's a big red flag. Big red flag. It's just a transactional relationship. It's not a partnership, and it's really not going to do the best that you want to do with those dollars.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that I also see with business owners is they're trying to handle the marketing themselves. Some of them are very savvy. Some of them are very savvy in specific areas, but then I see them scatter shooting other areas. And so I'll ask them, I was like, hey, what's your marketing plan? Like, how does it all function together? And I kind of get this blank look of, I don't understand what you're talking about. I'm doing this over here. I'm doing this over here. I'm doing this. I'm like, yeah, but where's the synergy? Talk to us a little bit about, for somebody who is thinking through either starting a business or has a business, what 30,000 foot level, what should a marketing plan look like? What should it include? And what should they be thinking about as they're creating it?
It shouldn't be 50 to 100 pages of just dense reports and vanity metrics without any context associated with it. I like to boil it down to a one-pager, right? Like, what is the business goal and objective? And if you're trying to increase revenue, or let's say grow a different way, we want to add on another location or a new attorney or a new service area, practice area, right? Like, you've got to understand what it is that you want to accomplish by 12/31 in any given year. And then understanding, okay, here's our total budget. Like, how much of our revenue are we allocating towards our marketing efforts this year? Once you've got that number, and that's going to vary by practice area, by market, by competitive landscape, internal resource, a whole slew of variables. But once you understand that, now you say, okay, well, which channels, where should I be spending my time and my money so that the people that I want to know about me, so that when there is an unfortunate accident, they need to leverage my services, I'm going to be right there for them. So that's going to, again, vary by practice area to figure out where the people that you want to target are spending the most of their time and attention. So you split that out amongst channels, and then you got to do some competitive research. I don't obsessively focus over it and try to have tunnel vision against, one particular firm. You're going to have a couple of players that are maybe beating you out in the map pack. You're going to have your 10 to 12 individuals on your, organic search results, but you know who the players are and where they may show up and where you might not show up, and you fill those gaps. So at a baseline, know the goals that allow you to take your budget, spread it across the specific channels, take a look at, well, as your competitive landscape. And then finally, at the end of the day, you want to define success. And doing that usually requires some sort of metric or KPI or benchmark that you're tracking against to see if you're up or down.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. All right, I want to switch gears. I want to hear a little bit more about your story. So, is becoming an entrepreneur, is that something that you've always seen yourself doing? Is that something that you just kind of fell into? How did that happen?
I mean, I have a sales background, right? 20 years deep, and I always was just, responsible for my own book of business in a patch or a territory. And I was always fortunate enough that I ran it like my own business, right? Like what I really enjoyed about sales was that I had no salary. I don't work 9 to 5. I work when I have to work, and I integrate it, with my life and social responsibilities as well as family responsibilities. But tying me up into a salary and into the 9 to 5, like it just was. That's why I went into sales, and I loved it because I could work as hard as I wanted to work and make, for the most part, as much money as possible. And that's what I enjoyed doing. So when I, left, I started my legal career within Thomson Reuters. Very fortunate and grateful for that opportunity, for as much shade as maybe some lawyers might throw at a company like that. And we can go deeper into whether or not I believe that is warranted. But from there, I gravitated towards the industry. Like I get to work with individuals that are like helping people in some of the, worst moments of their life. And I just really connected to that and wanted to do this. This is something that I had initially started about 8 or 9 years ago, right? Like the initial iteration of Legal Phoenix. I was incorporated and had been doing some side consulting. And then I just felt that it was time for me to try to address what I felt is a big gap in the industry.
And so that is obviously, I think, the preferable way to get started on your own business is if you can start it off on a side gig, right? Because that way you have the time for the foundation, you're building things up. And so whenever you make it your full-time job, you already have a running start. Not a whole lot of people have that opportunity. I would say a lot of entrepreneurs, something happens and kind of forces them to become an entrepreneur, or they just don't have the ability with their current job to do something like that. So, for you, what would you say to those kind of people who don't have the running start? What advice would you give them when it comes to taking that leap and starting their own company?
Man, to your point, like I was very fortunate when I started or kind of officially relaunched the business. I had 15 years behind me, ton of relationships. I had been in the same industry, and I was fortunate enough that, when I jumped off the W-2, I had a stable of clients already, right? If that's not the case, you're just going to have to be, my advice would be to try things out, right? Like you're not going to know exactly what the product is going to be, how it's going to be delivered, what the price point could potentially go up to. So you've got to test, and then you've got to be patient. Collect as much feedback as possible as you can from the clients that you are serving, because what you might think is valuable might not be as valuable to them, and vice versa. So collecting that client feedback is a great way that you can at least position yourself and put yourself on a path to hopefully do a little bit better, and then connect with as many people as you possibly can. Like I'm very active on LinkedIn. Like before I did it, I spoke to dozens of people just about their experience. What was the hardest part? What was some of the things that you wish you could have done differently? If there are any regrets, like just so that I could get a lay of the land. And I think that would, at least let you know for the most part what you might be up against.
So you've mentioned a couple of times now the power of your network. Right, both people that you actually know in real life, and those that you know on LinkedIn, right? We started off on LinkedIn. We've never met. We've still never met in person. Hopefully that'll be changing in the not too distant future. But it's amazing the power of LinkedIn, how you can develop those relationships. And we've spent time on Zoom. We have each other's phone numbers. We text back and forth, and I consider you a friend. That doesn't happen if you just treat LinkedIn like, what kind of as Tony Albrecht would say, as the traditional spot where you post new jobs and you make all these humble announcements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so talk a little bit about your strategy on LinkedIn and how that's really helped you to develop your own business.
Up until the previous 5 years, I used the platform like most people do in a similar way. Self-promotion, sharing company updates, blog posts, articles, resources, job openings, just liking and essentially a lurker, like many people are that don't necessarily contribute to the conversation. I made a strategic decision a handful of years ago just to put myself out there and start writing content, right? Like those first months, I mean, I've got the data. There's no traction. The data looks terrible. There's no visibility. No one's liking it. I'm shouting into the void. And even 4 years later, 5 years later, it can sometimes still feel that way.
Sure.
But my strategy has really evolved over the past 5 years, where I initially just said, listen, I've got this new thing going on. I got to get into more conversations with people that are outside my direct, intimate circle of like people that I saw locally, right? Like before COVID, I'm in New York and I'm in New Jersey, I'm in PA, and I'm meeting with more lawyers like face to face at events, at conferences, and I wasn't using the platform as well as I could have been. So all I wanted to do was say, listen, if I can showcase my expertise in legal marketing and help one lawyer avoid a bad relationship, not get trapped into a contract, relinquish control to any of their data or their systems or their tools, that's going to be my goal. And I would sit down and I would write it like almost like an email, just to one person. And I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And eventually I started to build a little bit more of a following, more traction, and that momentum turned into opportunities and eventually some sales opportunities and clients. As I've evolved and built up a little bit of a following, like right now, one of the things that I try to accomplish through LinkedIn, and maybe this is one of them, right? Every single quarter, I've got a goal to try to find some way, somehow to get onto 5 podcasts, right? Because then I could take these recordings, I can repurpose them, and maybe that'll save me some time. I don't have to write a post every single day. I can cut up a video and share it. The other thing that I try to do is open doors that would have remained closed had I not put myself out there. And what I mean by that is a lot of times a lawyer will come into the comment thread. They'll ask questions. They might not understand what I was talking about because it was a little too dense or it was technical. So they want to take that offline. Like that's what I'm trying to do there. When I'm on LinkedIn, I'm trying to host a conversation as best as I can, so that I can increase visibility and exposure to the great things that go on in this industry. And then sometimes the unfortunate gross underbelly of you got to look out because there are going to be some sharks out there. So it's evolved. And now what I'm trying to do is highlight, how I'm building this business more in public. And that's going to give me other opportunities that I didn't even pursue in years past.
And so for people who maybe they're not overly involved in LinkedIn, or maybe they're brand new to LinkedIn, how do you go about doing that in a way that is interesting? Right? Because there's a whole bunch of posts on LinkedIn that are not the least bit interesting of people trying to do exactly what you're doing. But I think you do a really good job of making it more personal. And I feel like anybody who reads, 10 of your posts is going to feel kind of like they know Ron a little bit. So how do you go about crafting your posts?
My process is pretty simple. I sit down for 30 minutes and I just start writing. I follow very intelligent and smart people. You've already mentioned Tony Albrecht from Contender, right? Like he'll be very happy to hear that someone is saying that my posts are bleeding into the personal, because that's something that I normally don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's refreshing as well as greatly appreciated that some of the personal stuff that I have shared did resonate, because many times I really just did think like, who cares? Like they don't care about this. They want to go onto LinkedIn. They want to learn how to, maximize their ad budget and improve SEO efforts. So I'm going to tell them how to do all these things. And I try to weave stories into it based off of experiences that I've had. But there's still, there's a little part of me that when I do share something a little bit personal, I question whether or not anyone's even going to read it. Um, I don't shy away from just trying to talk the way that I talk, and maybe sometimes it might be choppy or a little bit punchier. But as far as my process, like I'm at the point now where I've got about 4 or 5 years of content I've built up an archive, and I've completely turned it into a game. Like I look at some of the underperforming posts that I've had in years past, and I'm like, I really think that this is an important message that should continue to get, that I should continue to try to get across. I'll rewrite it. I'll repurpose it. I'll remix it. I wrote a post today that was described as esoteric, right? Like it was just very detailed information about how personal injury firms can track traditional advertising efforts like billboard, radio, TV, bus wraps, stuff like that. And I wrote this post, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months ago, and I've had other variations of it in years past. It doesn't really get a lot of reach because it's long, it's dense, it's technical, but it's the one that almost drives like the most DMs, because there are people out there like, oh my God, like, how do you do this? What should I do? Can I get my agency to help me set up this tracking infrastructure? Like that's the thing, like talking to one person, right? So today I was challenged. I'm in a group, Contender again, Tony coming up again, where I made fun of myself for this type of approach, and I was challenged to take that type of post and make it into more of a story. So that's what I did. So like I have fun with it now, Scott.
But I think too, you hit on a really important point. Reach doesn't matter on LinkedIn, right? It doesn't matter if you have 100,000 impressions if none of those people are going to reach out and connect with you and hopefully drive some aspect of your life forward, right? It's not just about business.
No.
It can be, a relationship. It can be spiritual. It can be encouragement. It can be some aspect of your life. It doesn't just have to be business. But with LinkedIn, it's more about reaching out. If you can reach 200 people that are going to gain value from your post, because the vast majority of people are not going to gain value on personal injury marketing posts, right? They're just not. Just like I wouldn't gain value from, a basket weaving post because I don't basket weave. And so the whole concept of you're not going for those huge dopamine hits of number of impressions and likes and comments and all that stuff necessarily, obviously that's helpful. But the true intention is, okay, who is my audience? Who am I trying to reach? And then for that specific audience I'm trying to reach, what stories can I tell, right? How do I show up in a way that differentiates me from others? One, yes, I want them to see my knowledge. I want them to see my expertise. But two, I want to connect with them through a post that, they can interact with. But the way that I like to do that is through weaving in the content into a story, just like you said you were challenged to do. And just like with everything, when you tell a story and you open up a little bit, you show people your vulnerability, there's this human connection that will naturally want to form. And so for me, if I look back over, the different posts that I've done on LinkedIn, the ones where I'm more, I guess the right word is vulnerable or open about, hey, here's who I am, are the ones that have they've performed the best, for one, but two, the ones that I've gotten the most significant interaction with, off of the main page on direct messages or whatever. But I think your point is well taken that, it's a different platform and you use it completely differently.
When a firm talks to me about performance and impressions or other types of metrics that they're trying to evaluate their success on, and they say, Ron, I only get 1,000 impressions. I'm like, oh, okay. But where are you speaking anywhere else where you're in front of or getting your message across to 1,000 people every day? And like that usually makes the connection. Don't get me wrong. Yes, when a post goes off and you've got tens of thousands of impressions, sure, you get that dopamine hit. And I do track all of my data. But like I'm having some of these conversations and people assume that I'm getting 10,000, 15,000 impressions per post. I average like 1,500. And many times it's under 100,000, but there's a very small sliver of lawyers that are also responsible for managing the marketing for their firm that really care and want to indulge and consume that type of content and interact with it. Those are the ones that I'm talking to, right? It's not the ones that doubt marketing or say that I only get business from referrals or LinkedIn. It's not for lawyers. We need our attorneys billing. That's fine. I don't even get into those debates anymore. Everyone's going to have their own outlook on that. But I think there's an incredible opportunity where if you do put yourself out there, not even by posting, you could just comment. You can increase the visibility for yourself, showcase a little bit of your expertise, and make some great connections and relationships along the way.
Absolutely. And that's how I started. I didn't start by posting. I realized that this was a different monster than any kind of other social media whenever I really started to take it seriously. And so I just watched other people. And what I really found was that the insightful comments were the ones that really kind of started a conversation on any kind of post. And so I started trying to do that. And naturally, right? If somebody comments on something that I've written and it's not just a yes or wow, that's great or something like that,
Great post.
Yeah, great post. I think, was it you or who wrote something on that the other day? I hate the 2-word posts.
I don't know, but someone, I made fun of myself doing that the other day where someone, they were talking about that and I responded with like a fake chat GPT great post response and got a couple. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. You're good. But the first thing I'm going to do is if I don't recognize them, I'm going to go to their profile and look at them, because I appreciate it. I appreciate somebody providing an insightful comment. And so if you're just getting started on LinkedIn or if you're on LinkedIn and looking to take it to the next level and you don't do that, man, I would so encourage you. It's not hard to go through, find a post that resonates with you and leave an insightful comment on it.
It is such an underutilized strategy. And what's great, I don't know if you have the beta yet, but right now on LinkedIn, they are starting to show me the impressions that my comments are generating. And I can tell you that when I'm leaving very thoughtful, and I hopefully they're insightful comments on other people's posts, right? Not 5 words, right? Like something that I really thought about. Those comments are generating up to 50% of the impressions that my average posts even generate.
Wow.
So if you do that, I'm not going to, and that's not every post, but if you're doing that 3 to 4 times a day, right? Like you don't need to post. I could do 4 comments that'll generate 250, 300 impressions. And I didn't even post today. And now I might have made relationships with 4 different people because they appreciate, and it's likely that they're going to reciprocate in a future post now that we've engaged with one another. So those that have attorneys within their firms that are a little bit hesitant, or they're like, I don't know what to say, or I don't really want to publish it. I'm so nervous about I might get some negative attention or exposure here. Jump into the comments. You can control how you react to somebody else's post. Be professional, be respectful, of course. Not saying go troll somebody, but do something that if somebody does read it, they're going to say, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to check that out next time I see that Scott commented on someone's post.
Absolutely. And you can this helps you define your target audience too, right? If you know who they are, well, you have other people that are posting to your target audience too. If you can find them and comment on their things, then the people who otherwise wouldn't show up in your area, wouldn't show up in your contacts or people you should know, are all of a sudden going to start checking you out. And boom, there's an easy way to increase your network and thereby your influence. Because essentially that's kind of what we're trying to do on LinkedIn, right? Is we're trying to increase our influence. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way at all, but for your business, you need to be increasing your influence because you need to be getting out there in front of as many people as possible, because you should believe that whatever it is you do, you're really good at, and that people would be missing out by not hiring you.
Completely agree. And I think that when you've got yourself ready to do that, game on.
Absolutely. All right. So kind of getting back to creating your own network, this is one of the things that we've talked about this before, was never talked about in high school, was never really talked about in college, was never talked about in law school. And that is the power of really creating that network and nurturing that network. And, it's one of the very first things I learned from Ben Glass. when I joined GLM is, hey, you have got to start that list. That list is everyone you know. As much contact information with them as you have, and you're constantly growing that list. That list is your lifeblood. That list is the people in your network, the people that know you or know of you, the people that will support you, the people that will buy that thing or that service. And so for you, when did it click, and how did you go about starting to put your network in one spot to be able to nurture it as well as grow it?
I should have started earlier. As far as like once I launch Legal Phoenix, I had a big archive again of content on LinkedIn. I had an audience that I had on LinkedIn and that I have on LinkedIn, but I don't want to be beholden to the algorithm as far as suppressing my voice or my posts. So just like, a GLM principle there, like, you get the newsletter out, right? So I started building that and taking people off of that platform so that I could have more one-to-one conversations with them. But the way that I did it was like, it was one at a time, right? I was in LinkedIn. I then went over to my newsletter from all the podcasts that I was on. I would then start repurposing that content. And then I moved to LinkedIn. I didn't just try to jump in and boil the ocean all at once. I had so many other things to do. I was running the business. I was trying to manage and do all of the client work. In the midst of that, I started hiring employees. Now I got to do all this payroll stuff, and I've got to work with more accountants and my lawyers. Like the time was just fleeting. It was just running away from me. So, I needed to make sure that when I was going to put something out, it was going to resonate, and it wasn't just going to potentially fall flat because an algorithm decided not to show it. I also didn't want to half-ass anything. I didn't want to just jump in and check a box, right? And admittedly, I still feel like I do that, for example, with like Facebook. My Facebook profile has probably been dormant for over a decade. And like at the end of last year, randomly, I got a flurry of lawyers that were coming in inbound, and all of them kept saying, like, in the attribution, Facebook group, Facebook, heard of you on Facebook. And it's like 5 or 6 firms. And I'm like, I don't do anything on the platform. I'm not active. Like, how are they finding me there? And it turns out that, like the LinkedIn strategy that I talked about, many of these people had heard me on other podcasts. They were in lawyer-only Facebook groups, and individuals were talking about, like, who do you use for this? Or who would you go to for that? And then people started dropping my names. Like, I can't even see these comments because I'm not, invited into these groups. They're lawyers only. I'm not a lawyer. So like I repurpose a lot of LinkedIn content. I wouldn't even say repurpose. I copy and paste it just because the time, it's hard. And I understand it. And I empathize with lawyers about this all the time. But I had to have something that was at least a little bit more professional so that if people are finding me in these groups and these comment threads on Facebook, if they check out Legal Phoenix, like there's activity. I do exist. Whereas before, I would just have to hope and pray that maybe they would find their way over to LinkedIn. So now I've got LinkedIn, I've got some of the Facebook stuff going. I share a little bit more time on YouTube, and eventually if something else does come out and I do have time or bandwidth, like I would give it a fair shot, but I try to take a staged approach because I do think that the quality it matters.
You've mentioned one of my favorite words 3 or 4 times now, and that is repurpose. Because as I've found, repurpose equals Scott doesn't have to do as much. Sure. And so when you look at a piece of content, go through some of the different ways that you can repurpose that content. Let's say this podcast, for instance. What are some different ways that you could repurpose a podcast?
So after we're done with this recording, whenever the producer is done, tighten it up in a nice little package. If I get the whole video, the raw recording, I'll go through and have someone timestamp the sections in which I want to cut and clip to repurpose on LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as YouTube Shorts. So we'll go through, we'll get all those timestamps. Once that's approved, I send that to video post-production. They send me the clips. I review them, make sure they're good. We've got some, text overlay and some animation to like make it pop, and I'm just not a talking head. And then once that's approved, I go in, I schedule those out in between each day. sometimes I'll add a little bit of context because, right, it might just be a clip of me saying something and it's like out of nowhere. So I do have to do a little bit of writing just to set the stage, but that's one way. Another way, and it's about 2 weeks ago, I got absolutely torched. Well, not absolutely torched, but I did get shredded up in the comments about encouraging people to repurpose and remix some of their posts. And there was an individual that just completely disagreed with me, which is totally fine. Like, it was a mostly respectful debate that was going on.
And he's wrong, by the way.
Well, there weren't any other people that agreed. Maybe some of them. That's not true. There were people that jumped in and reacted to their comment. But for example, one thing, like I talked about content that I would have in years past. I'll take those posts, I will completely flip them on their head, right? Because sometimes the way that I would write, it just so happened that like a very punchy or catchy hook or like tagline or whatever it may be, I would always end there. So I'm like, well, what if I just flip this on its head? And I started that way. Like, that's what I was talking about earlier with it being a game. I look at it like a game. So if I'm like, or a challenge, right? Like, Driven here, right? I want to take that, like it fell flat. It didn't do anything last time, but I still think that there's some value behind it. Let me try to rewrite it. Maybe I'll weave a story into it. Maybe I will tag someone, right? Like, I'll try different things every time that I repurpose it. Now, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not posting something on a Monday and repurpose it on a Thursday.
Yeah.
Like I tend to try to go back to like what I would call my greatest hits on a quarterly basis, just because over those 90 days, I'm introducing so many new people into the fold, and I've got, more followers, more connections, that I want them to see some of that stuff so that they understand like what my philosophy is or what my methodology might be, how I might take a look at this. Like, what is my perspective and stance on certain things that really get, run around the legal marketing circuit,
right?
So that they know if I'm going to engage or work with this guy, like, this is the mindset.
Well, and I think you just exposed that basic false assumption of the people who are against repurposing. And they're assuming that people have seen it before. Some people have. A whole lot of people haven't. Even the people that follow you. I don't see everything you post on LinkedIn. I don't hear everything that you have to say. And so if you repurpose something, I might recognize it, but do I get mad about it? No, I see exactly what you're doing. And chances are, it's not like you're just copying an old post and pasting it into a new one. There's going to be a different spin on it, like you said. So I think that basic false assumption is huge in that argument of should we repurpose or not. My position is absolutely, and repurpose it on everything that you do. So, all right, we have time for one final question, and that is, give me top 3 book recommendations. It can be fiction, nonfiction, business, doesn't matter.
Perfect. Right now, I just finished, and it's literally on my desk, 4 Conversations.
Yeah.
By Blair Enns.
That one's been popular.
What's that?
That one's been popular on here.
Oh man, I'm sorry that I did that. It's pretty new.
It's a great book.
It is. It's a great book. Obviously, EOS and fireproof and like traction has run rampant throughout legal over the past couple of years. And since I just came from my quarterly, like I have kind of just ravished through like the entire EOS book collection.
Yeah, the library.
It's Gino Wickman. What a brilliant guy! Like, being able to talk about repurposing.
Yes.
Right. Like, many of those books, like very, very like, what the heck is EOS? How to be a great boss? Like, these are all the principles that are in Traction, but Traction's the more dense version, and it's got a lot more detail. And then let's see. Let me give you a non-business book. Oh, I really like Eric Larson.
Yeah.
Who does like In the Garden of the Beasts,
Devil in the White City.
Yeah, Devil in the White City. Great book. Like, all of his stuff, just because, he's weaving the story into history, and like, I love that. So when I fly is basically like, I just love it, because then I just crush books.
Right.
It's like I get some quiet time. I can actually like enjoy it. I'm not rushed. So there's 3. I wish I had a different one there.
Well, no, that's funny. I read Devil in the White City. I bought it at an airport as I was getting ready for a flight, and it was awesome. So
one of I normally would only read what my wife would, or my children actually just call me like workbooks.
Yep.
But like a decade ago, when I was reading something that wasn't business related, Neil Gaiman's American Gods, I picked up in an airport, like traveling internationally. I read the entire thing, like there and back. It was, I mean, if you're into that stuff, I had no idea what to expect when I got it.
Yeah,
but
he's
really,
crazy
really
good
book.
Crazy good author. All right, Ron, thank you so much for your time. We are out of it today. And thank you so much to everyone who tuned in to another episode of the Driven Crowd podcast. We'll see you next time.